Welcome back, everyone. I'm Yossi Goslin, NBA salary cap expert, and sorry for the long wait. I haven't put anything out in a while, but with free agency happening, it's just a lot to keep up with everything, keep all my data in order, update everything. Salary capping isn't very easy, but I'm back now, and I want to start talking about teams and what they did this offseason. And I want to start with the Thunder, who I think had the best offseason. They're very well prepared to win the whole thing this year and contend for multiple years. So let's get into them. And whether you're new to the channel or you've been here before, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It will help a lot with this channel's growth. So first, I want to take a look at where the Thunder started and just show their order of operations. Pretty simple offseason. The first thing they did was trade Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. When I talked about the Thunder earlier, about what their offseason could look like, I talked about the possibility of them getting off of Josh Giddey now. He was about to become extension eligible. And getting a player like Alex Caruso for him is probably as great as a return as you can get, especially since they didn't have to give up any first-round picks. And they still have a boatload of draft picks over the next 7 drafts. So they get yet another high-end defensive guard to go along with Shai and Lou Dort and Cason Wallace. Teams are going to have a very tough time just getting the ball down the court against this Thunder team. Then draft. They went ahead and selected Nikola Topic, which he was being talked about as potentially being a top 4 pick until he had that ACL injury. So I think for the Thunder, even if he never really becomes a rotational piece over the next few years, he's not even going to play next year. He's not expected to. That's still a very high value pick. And for them, it's probably at least a very good value proposition where you get this player who, even if he's not in the Thunder's plans, they could do something with him in a future transaction. And they went ahead and traded for the pick for Dylan Jones, late end first round pick, took away roughly $2.6 million in their salary cap space. So then they went into free agency, and before they did anything, they declined the team options for Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe. And this was something I also talked about, mainly for Isaiah Joe, but it made sense to do it for Aaron Wiggins as well. And by doing this, they went ahead and gave them raises. On this year, they were going to make like $2 million each. Now they're each making like around 10 to 12. I'll get to the Thunder actual cap sheet in a second. But the whole strategy is that they have $30 million in cap space, which they're going to go ahead and spend. And then afterwards, they can go ahead and re-sign Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe to pretty big contracts. They both have sufficient bird rights on them, so they can give them very good team-friendly deals that helps keep a high level of depth over the next few years as the team gets more expensive. So the Oklahoma City Thunder went ahead and used all $30 million of their cap space to sign Isaiah Hartenstein. So he was limited to the amount of money the Knicks can resign him to, roughly 4 years, $72.5 million, which would have started him at just over $16 million. So the Thunder just went ahead and doubled that first year amount and gave him 3 years, $87 million. Starts at $30 million this year, and the last 2 years are $28.5 million each. He's got a team option on that last year, which is going to be very huge. I will get into it later how that's going to play into for the Thunder down the line. But they get yet another all-defensive player, in my opinion, along with Alex Caruso in Hartenstein. He didn't hit the games or minutes criteria needed to qualify for awards. But otherwise, I think he would have made the team easily. And they needed another big man, and they got one of the best ones available. I think they should easily have a top 5 defense now, and he's does a lot offensively too. He can move the ball really well. Maybe they have him shoot more threes like when he was with the Clippers. Very excited to see how this looks. And then as for Isaiah Joe, they gave him 4 years, $48 million. They gave Aaron Wiggins 5 years, $45 million. The main thing is that they both got descending deals. So you could see Isaiah Joe starts at $13 million. It's going to end at $11.3 million. That's a team option in whatever year that ends. And then they gave Aaron Wiggins, they started him at $10.5 million. It's going to end at $8 million in the last year as well. So by paying it forward, they're paying these guys now to accept these team-friendly deals. These dollar amounts, whatever 10 to 12 million that they're making over the next 4 to 5 years, it's a very small percentage of the cap. And they just have like awesome 6 through 8 guys now as they look to continue this window that they're just starting. And then another thing to keep in mind is that, so the Thunder, they're at 14 players. They could comfortably go into the season with this 14-man roster they have right now. They're roughly 11.5 million below the luxury tax. They're not going to exceed that amount this year. Maybe in future years they will, but they still have some more money to spend. They could use that $8 million room mid-level exception. Not really any free agents out there worth using it for right now. And considering how deep they are in every position, no rush to use it. However, they could just keep it into the season and use it as a trade exception. That's a new rule out in the CBA that the mid-level exception can be used to acquire a player that fits within in a trade. So maybe they look to add a rotation player down the line, could also just take back some bad money with some draft picks attached, just further add to that pile of picks. Now, I quickly want to go over what the next 2 years could look like for the Thunder because they're going to be in a very good financial situation. So first, I want to talk about Alex Caruso. So in December, late December, he will become extension eligible with the Thunder for roughly 4 years, $81 million. It would start him at $18.1 million, go up to the low 20s at the end of the extension. Now, I'm penciling him in at that extension right now. Obviously, things can change, but in my opinion, he probably is worth that amount. He was technically renegotiation eligible if the Thunder kept some cap space into the season, but that's not happening anymore. They spent it all. So just something to keep in mind that what his first year salary for the next season could look like because he is expiring. He is their only significant free agent. And then if you look at the rest of the roster, they're not going to have 17 players. Obviously, they're going to have to trim it down. But they do have a surplus of first-round picks in this upcoming draft. So they'll probably get down to 15 players. But the biggest thing to look at is that they're already right at the luxury tax line. It's projected at 187.9 million. So they are in position to remain under the tax yet again. And, these next 2 years, they're already in a very strong contending position. So this is very notable because they're going to want to stay below the tax for as long as possible because most likely they are going to become taxpayers once Jalen, Williams, and Chet Holmgren extend. And this 25-26 season, which would be next season, is going to be their last years on their rookie deals. So now I want to take a look at the Thunder 2 years ahead. I normally don't project that far out, but because we already have a lot of data, most of the players are still under contract, it's going to be easy to do it. So first, let's look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And this is pretty huge that they didn't give him a player option on the max deal that they have him on right now. Because of that, he is still going to be making $40.8 million. If he had that player option, he already qualified for the Supermax. He could be opting out of that and shooting all the way up to, 60 million, whatever the first year of that Supermax would be for that season. So they still got him on a relatively low salary. Then let's look at Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. I penciled them in at max contracts. Again, it's going to be very difficult to project how these players are going to play over the next few years. Maybe they don't actually become max players, but just as a high-end scenario, I'm putting them in on their first-year max salaries, which is $38.7 million. Then you've got Isaiah Hartenstein, Lou Dort, Kayson Wallace, Kenrich Williams are all going to be on team options. I'll get to those in a second. I put the second-year salary for Alex Caruso, assuming he takes that max extension. Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, they're declining. I kept some of the first round picks, then put all of them that they have upcoming. I excluded their 26 picks just to not make the sheet so complicated, but they do have more 2026 first round picks coming up. And I just leave it at this 14 player roster. Payroll exceeds 200 million, and they've got a very high luxury tax bill. It's close to 100 million. I put the updated tax figures based on raises on how that their tax bill would look like if they're 30 million over the tax. So very expensive roster. If you're worried that the Thunder might not want to spend that much, I wouldn't be, because they've already shown a very big appetite to spend deep into the tax. Back when they had Russell Westbrook and Paul George, they had like one of the biggest tax payments at the time when it happened. And I think that they're going to be willing to pay a big amount. However, for this upcoming season, I don't even think they will pay this high, especially because this roster build I have is over the second apron. And this is where these team options come in. If you see, you got Isaiah Hartenstein's got that $28.5 million. Lou Dort's got that $17.7 million. Now the Thunder are in a position where they can try to decline those options and get them to re-sign on slightly lower amounts for longer. Both those guys, they signed contracts at the time, which seemed like okay, they're definitely getting a lot more money than they should at the time that they were signing them. And this is just like one way that they could uh, take advantage of these team options to make a even further sustainable roster with this high level of depth. So even if getting them a little lower doesn't get them below the second apron, they could maybe decline Kenrich Williams. Like there's a pathway for them to stay below the second apron that season, and that's going to be a pretty. I think the main threshold they'll not want to exceed that 229.2 million projected amount, just because if they stay over the second apron, then their draft pick 7 years out, I don't know, I think that's 2035 at that point, would be frozen. They can't trade it. If they finish over the second apron again, it could drop to the end of the first round. And I did mention about the theory that maybe that doesn't even matter for the Thunder if they stay over the second apron because they have all these extra draft picks. I believe they have now 12 first round picks over the next 7 drafts, which isn't the most now, but it's still top 5. And I don't think they're going to consolidate them, make like a huge trade to get another big rotation player. They never did that. They still didn't move any of their first round picks when they were getting Caruso, or they just chose to get Isaiah Hartenstein, who didn't require any picks to get. So I would imagine that they're going to just keep these picks and make selections with them just to further sustain their depth, which is going to be crucial as this team gets more expensive. So with these all, basically, I'm saying with all these extra picks, maybe it doesn't kill them for those draft pick penalties in the future to happen. But I do expect that in this season, and then maybe even the following season, that they stay below the second apron and they try their best to do that. But it'll be hard to tell once Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's presumed supermax kicks in, and if Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren are making max contracts as well. They may have to start being a second apron team starting in, 27, 28. 4 years from now, whatever, 3, 4 years from now, very hard to project. But we'll see, because the fact that they're going to be able to keep this team together at least through 28, 29, I think most likely that's pretty realistic. That's huge. Most teams aren't even in that position to keep 5, 6 high-end players now under this new system for like 3, 4 years. So yeah, I'm just very intrigued and fascinated with the Thunder situation. They're in a very strong position to contend for longer than this new salary cap system might intend.